Hi everyone, welcome in. Good to be with you. I know this is not April. I know you're used to seeing April's red hair and red lipstick, but it's not her today. Hello, Kevin.
I am nowhere near as good looking as April, and I feel really sorry now that you've made the comparison. I'm just imposing my face on people. That's horrible.
Friends, hello, welcome in. Second live this week. We will say that yesterday was kind of an emergency broadcast, given that I don't know, Elon Musk did a freaking Hitler salute at a Trump inauguration, and then people defended it. There was so much to talk about. So April and I went live yesterday. You can go ahead and watch that video. We are going to be trimming it up and posting some shorter clips from that live this week. So make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. Make sure you like this video. Today, we're going to change gears. Kind of. I mean, I'm sure we're going to overlap into what's going on in culture, but today we're going to be talking about deconstruction, which really is getting back to my roots. When I first started this work, deconstruction was all the rage. People are deconstructing their faith. I'm deconstructing my faith. And we're going to respond to a video by Tim Barnett that Focus on the Family has been pushing about how we talk about deconstruction and what it means and all that stuff. So welcome in. Make sure you give this video a like. That'd be so helpful. It's good to see you. To my left is, I would say now, definitely a good friend, Dr. Kevin Carnahan. You've been on the show multiple times, and we've unpacked many different types of content. We've done sermon reviews. We responded to a white nationalist sermon that was 3 hours long that now has 100,000 views. So it's good to have you with me. I know you have not been on in a minute or two. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience, give them some background.
So I'm Kevin Carnahan. I'm a professor of philosophy and religion at Central Methodist University. That's the eagle, is Central Methodist. People always think that I'm a big Philadelphia fan,
which you should be. You should be.
Yeah.
Go Birds.
Okay. I'm not taking any partisan position in that.
Typical white moderate. Typical white moderate.
Yeah. There you go. So I've been like the co-editor of the Journal of the Society of Christian Ethics. I have 71,000 followers on TikTok for as long as it lasts at this point. Who knows what the frick's going on there. I'm on everything else as well. So if anybody wants to find my stuff, you can just search Kevin Carnahan and go to just about any social media that you can find.
I love it. I was trying to find, I know I have a copy of their book, Tim and Elisa's book. It's somewhere on my shelf. Do I have it back there? I should have grabbed it, but I was a little bit late. Anyway, I have read their book.
Did you read it?
I did. I did read it.
You did?
Yes. I have a ton of tabs and stuff. I'll see if I can find it as we're kind of going through this. The book that they wrote was called The Deconstruction of Christianity. If you're new to maybe the show or to this world, Tim Barnett and Elisa Childers, I would classify fairly, are like evangelical apologists. They like to give a defense for their faith, why they believe what they believe. Now, in full transparency, I will tell you that Tim Barnett and Elisa both spoke to me as they were writing this book. They reached out to me years ago. This is like 3 years ago, and said, hey, we'd love to talk to you privately. We had a very great cordial conversation. I have since invited Elisa and Tim on the show multiple times. I have emailed them. I have reached out. I've said, listen, we'd love to have you on. Want to make sure we're not strawmanning your position. So far, they have not responded to that request. So I'm just putting that out there. I'm not saying that they're bad people. I'm just saying that they have not responded to my request to come on the podcast and talk about it. They wrote a book, The Deconstruction of Christianity. I went through it. It's pretty typical evangelical, I think, argumentation for why anything that challenges that way of thinking is unbiblical and terrible and postmodern. So recently, we have a private Facebook community, Kevin, and someone screenshotted that Focus on the Family was promoting this series on deconstruction. They said, hey, put your email address in here. We'll send you the free video series. Sure, yeah. Why not? So I did. And so what we're going to do is I brought you on, Kevin, because one thing I like about you is that you're obviously academic, you know what you're talking about, but you communicate in layman's terms. And I really appreciate that about you. Like things that might be kind of complicated, you can communicate in really direct ways. So I appreciate your commentary because you're really good at that. So what I thought that we could do is that we could go through, what you did was you took the series and kind of condensed it into some of their main talking points. I mean, there's like 6 or 7 different videos, but it's about, you condense it down to about a 20-minute talk, give or take. And we're just going to kind of go through Tim Barnett's view of deconstruction, what it is, and give our thoughts. I mean, that's what we're here to do. And like I said earlier, and I'll say it again, if Tim Barnett and or Lisa Childers are somehow watching this, the invitation stands. One of my dreams, Kevin, and I mean this, would be to get Tim, Elisa, and two other maybe more progressive theologians into the same room on camera and just let them go back and forth to have a real dialogue. I have noticed this pattern, and I want your thoughts on it, Kevin. And by the way, friends, if you're just joining, welcome in. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. It would do such a solid, and it will get this video recommended out to more people. But one thing I've realized, and I don't want to sound unfair, but I have noticed a pattern. I've been in this space now for 4 years, full-time for 3. I have reached out to people across the aisle multiple times. I've reached out to John Cooper from Skillet multiple times. I've reached out to Elisa, to Tim Barnett, and many others. None of them seem that keen to come on the show or even talk to me privately. I don't know why that is. I've noticed that, like, I've never really seen a video where Elisa Childers talks to a progressive scholar or theologian and they have a discussion. It seems kind of siloed. Now, my detractors will say I'm being uncharitable, but that's just what I've seen. Have you seen the same thing? I mean, you make content on TikTok. What are your thoughts on that? I would love to kind of know.
Yeah, I mean, I think in part, and we're going to see this language here too, that a lot of these people consider themselves to be like at war with the people who are on the other side of this thing. I mean, they use that kind of language. They talk about like dominating other people, like almost controlling their thoughts. We'll see this as we come into this this video. I think it's hard once you kind of put yourself in that rhetorical position to then go and have a productive conversation with somebody. I mean, once you've declared yourself to be at war with somebody, it's hard to go and then talk to them as if they are reasonable people in the way that probably they really are. And I think that this is true. I mean, we're going to look at Tim's part of the video here. In part, we're going to focus on that because the other part, like Alyssa's part, is actually incredibly reasonable, incredibly like careful in what she's saying. I think it would be interesting if you could get these people into a conversation where they would actually have to qualify some of the things that they're saying, but I don't think that they necessarily want to do that. I don't know that they want to qualify their claims in a conversation where they would be held accountable for what they're saying.
That's fair. I don't know. You know, there's someone in the chat who actually know. He's a friend, Tim Hull. I'll bring up his chat here just so we can see it for the audience for future lives. Let me see if I can grab this. So Tim Hull, I've been on his show, by the way. And Tim, by the way, I'm talking to Tim Hull now. I'm not going to respond to everything you're saying, only because you can't respond back. I don't want you to feel like you're being ganged up on here. That isn't my point. But I just want to kind of give one of the answers that Tim gave, because Tim did talk to Tim Barnett on his show. He said earlier in the chat, what did you say, Tim? You said... hold on, I'm just pulling it up here. You said that that one of the reasons why they won't talk to people maybe in person as often as someone like myself is that we're not their main audience. And then you also said here that, quote, their ministry is not to debate, but to educate. So look, I'm not going to say that's an unreasonable position to have. What I will say is that the frustration a lot of us have is that it seems like they're talking at us and about us without talking to us directly, unless they're pulling tweets or a handful of conversations they had in private. And it's just, that part to me is, again, frustrating. Now, I can be frustrated. They don't have to do anything about it. But I just wish that, like, you know, if you're going to talk about people, have the conversation. I've had Christian Nationalists on the show before. I go to their events. I'm willing to engage with them. Tim Barnett and Elisa seem very content to kind of live in their silo, talk to their audience about another outgroup of people who are, you know, losing a biblical worldview, and then just letting the chips fall where they may. For me, that's not really my style, but it is what it is. I don't know if you want to respond to that, Kevin, but that's just kind of my thoughts on it.
Well, I think you will see a little bit of what he's talking about here, in that the rhetoric of this talk is not for an audience outside of modern white American evangelicalism. It is for that audience. And he even, as he goes through, kind of assumes things. He'll say, well, when you look at this stuff, right, you can see that it's dangerous. It will be depressing to you, right? Which obviously he's not talking to people who are deconstructing. Because they don't find it depressing. They don't find it dangerous. They find it freeing, right? He will talk about those people who are deconstructing, but he's not talking to those people.
Yeah, fair. Cool. Well, listen, let's get into this video. I'll let you kind of guide us, Kevin. You can pause whenever you want. Maybe I'll interject as well here and there. Again, friends, if you're watching, thank you so much. I really do love going live. Going live is one of my favorite things. The energy is so different than a pre-recorded thing. Please give this video a like if you're watching. Give the channel a subscribe. I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, let's get into this. This is from Focus on the Family. It's an excerpt, about 18 minutes, of Tim Barnett's kind of intro to deconstruction, what it is. Here's the actual that's from last week. There we go. This is the actual like landing page, okay? Episode 1, Defining Deconstruction. And again, we have pulled clips from all of his talks into one super clip, and we can kind of respond to it as we go along. So, without further ado, here we go.
When terms are not clearly defined, we can end up talking past each other, right? It happens with our 6-year-olds, but it can happen between adults too. When words have multiple meanings, it can create a whole lot of confusion, especially when it comes to words as emotionally charged as the word deconstruction. Now, this became really clear a few years ago when Skillet's frontman, John Cooper, he was taking actually a few minutes between sets, between songs at Winter Jam, and he said these words. He said, "It's time for us and your generation to declare war on this idolatrous deconstruction Christian movement."
I actually responded to that video when he'd said that a couple of years ago. I was like, what are you talking about, dude? I mean, maybe to paint this in the most charitable light for John, right? So a lot of us who were renegotiating our faith, we were doing it around various culture war issues that we were changing our minds on, and also trying to explore if maybe the Bible was either clearer than we were taught or wasn't as clear as we were taught around certain issues. Mainly queer inclusion. That's probably one of the biggest ones here when it comes to this deconstruction thing. And so for someone like John Cooper, who has went farther down that more fundamentalist rabbit hole, embracing people like Candace Owens, talking about, how we have to embrace his faith and his family and his freedom. That's all he cares about, etc. I can understand how someone like me, who's also still very much a Christian, who would even affirm quote unquote orthodox beliefs about the virgin birth and the Trinity and the resurrection, because I changed my mind on queer inclusion, to him, I'm like a reprobate who's given myself over to some kind of postmodern ideology, right? So John Cooper is this rock and roller. He goes on stage and goes, "I declare war on this idolatrous thing called deconstruction." And I'm like, John, like, what are you doing, bro? Like how about you just talk to us?
Yeah. Well, and I also think, there's a deep irony in calling like deconstruction idolatry, because deconstruction is pretty much based on like anti-idolatry. The whole idea of deconstruction is that you're going to take on these structures of religion that are man-made, and you're going to ask questions about whether they're right. You're going to take on these particular conceptions of God that you've been told about since you're a kid, and you're going to say, is that really God? Or is that just what I've been told, right? And you're trying to get rid of exactly the idols in your life that like stand in for God or get in the way of your relationship with God. So I find the claim really strange. Like, we need to take on this idolatrous movement of deconstruction. Now, surely sometimes that anti-idolatry takes you all the way to atheism, because if you end up getting rid of all your conceptions of God, right, it takes you there. And deconstruction is open to that, in part because it is so anti-idolatry. It's like, you know what? If you come through and you end up getting rid of all of the conceptions of God, and that's where you land, then at least you've done the work of going through and challenging those idols in your life. This is one of the things that I find most ironic about this video, and that I just don't think that he gets about deconstruction and its relation to his position, because from the perspective of deconstruction, what he is doing in this video, what Tim is doing in this video, is idolatry. He's going to argue for a particular human conception, which is the American modern white evangelical conception of God, conception of the Bible, and put that forward as if that has an authority that really should not be questioned. Really should not be, you shouldn't ask questions about it. And from the perspective of deconstruction, that's exactly idolatry, right? I mean, you're putting forward a human position and pretending like it is God,
Mm.
so that you can't really go around it anymore. This is a theme that I think runs through the entire video, is that he really doesn't get the critique of evangelicalism at all as he's talking about deconstruction. And for that reason, he really doesn't get deconstruction.
And this is why I bring on the big guns, friends. You hear that? I could never articulate that the way you just did, but yes, that makes a lot of sense. So why don't we keep going and see how Tim breaks down deconstruction? I'm sure we're going to get into Jacques Derrida at some point, and I'll have you kind of parse that out for us, etc. So let's keep it going. That's the wrong button. Play.
And the 15,000 plus people who were there kind of thunderously applauded what he had to say.
Okay, so if you can pause here. I do also want to note that the war language has already come up in this discussion, and to pay attention to the ways that kind of language of domination play into this. So you've already mentioned like Derrida and deconstruction. One of the elements of deconstruction is like looking at the rhetoric, looking at the language that people use, and realizing the ways that that language is being used to shape the world that you live in. Right. And so he's picking up on this language about war, this language about conflict. And we'll see a couple more times where like language about domination comes into it. And this crowd like applauding that as they go. It's for a person who is not a modern white evangelical. This very easily sounds dangerous, especially at our current political moment, when we actually have some of this being put into a political program that goes beyond just the language of war and domination, but actually puts it into coercive policies. So again, I think he just doesn't seem aware of the ways that his language would come across, or maybe like the comment said, right? He's not actually concerned about that because he's talking to an audience that has accepted his view, is not going to question it, and basically is on board with everything he's going to say anyway.
Yeah. Really quick, because you can tell I did so much show prep ahead of time. Did you put breaks like that in between each segment that you want to respond to?
Most of them. There are a couple times when I'll probably break in and say something, but most of the time there is a little break in between.
All right, cool. We'll keep it going.
Everyone was so excited. In fact, in the aftermath, you could, hop on the Christian kind of publishing world online, different websites. You had conflicting opinions. So you had Relevant Magazine. They said that John Cooper is operating from a fundamental misunderstanding of what deconstruction really is. And then you had the church leaders' website. Well, they took a more neutral approach, and they actually let John kind of explain himself. But
by the way, I try to say something. Church leaders they're very right wing. Like they platform Charlie Kirk. So I just gotta say that. Like it's not like even that statement's like church leaders is not some like moderate, perspective. They are very much a right-wing organization.
Right. I mean, you notice that immediately in the way that he's talking. He says, well, Relevant was criticizing what he said, but then, this outlet was much more unbiased because they let it just come in and say it again. And it's like, that's not what unbiased means. Right. I don't know that you've picked up on that, but...
Okay, I had to call it out.
In the aftermath, it became very clear that people were using the word deconstruction to mean different things. Some were defining it to mean something like, I'm just asking questions, where others were using the word to mean something like, this is a movement away from historic Christianity. Now,
okay, we should stop there for a moment because this is one of those great examples of where he's participating in exactly what a person who's into deconstruction would call idolatry. To suggest that deconstruction is opposed to historical Christianity or something, and that he's a representative of historical Christianity. I mean, he's a representative of a particular move in theology that happened around the 1800s, early 1900s, when you got modern American white evangelical Protestantism. The approach to the Bible that he takes is distinctive of that movement. You're not going to find him defending allegorical interpretations of the Bible, which were the standard across the majority of Christian history. You're not going to find him defending the Pope and the magisterium of the Catholic Church, which was dominant across the majority of Western Christianity. He's decided here that his form of Christianity is historical, right? And he's presenting it as if it is the version of Christianity that has always been around. But that is a very human construction and a misguided human construction of Christianity itself. And this is exactly the kind of move that I think people who participate in deconstruction are exactly worried about, because they're worried about people putting forward positions with authority that don't actually exist. They're human beings who are claiming the authority of the Bible, of the Christian tradition, and ultimately of God for themselves and their views, and complaining about other people. I also note his two versions of deconstructing. The one is asking questions, the other is leaving historic Christianity. And the difference between those seems to be you can ask questions so long as you don't come to different conclusions than I come to. Right? As asking questions is fine as long as you conclude the same thing that I conclude. But as soon as you stop concluding what I conclude, then apparently you've gone over to bad deconstruction or leaving historical Christianity, which of course it isn't, because he's representing a particular modern kind of Christianity.
Let me ask you a quick question. This is an important detour. That term historic Christianity, people usually qualify it by saying, well, there are general themes and beliefs that all Christians have held. And they'll quote things like the Trinity, the virgin birth, the resurrection, maybe something around sexual orientation, something like that. You know, you're the academic here. I mean, is that fair to say that hey, throughout, no matter if it's Eastern Orthodox, Protestant, Catholic, there are certain beliefs that have been largely held by most Christians throughout history, hence historic Christianity?
I think the one thing that you could say is consistent across Christianity that all Christians would agree to is the claim Jesus Christ is Lord. Beyond that, and even interpreting what it means to say Jesus Christ is Lord, you'll immediately find people disagreeing. And some of the basic, like the virgin birth is a great example of this. The virgin birth as a story doesn't show up in Mark, which is the first of the Gospels. It seems to be that people started believing in the virgin birth around probably the 80s when they took up this story. The idea of the Trinity doesn't get put forward and like worked out until the 4th century. So there's no way, if you go back to the people who wrote the Bible and try to have a conversation with them about the Trinity, they're just going to look at you like, what the heck are you talking about? Original sin is really taken up and developed by Augustine, again in the 3rd and 4th century. Christianity is, like every social organization, social movement, an evolving thing. And you don't start out with one picture of what historical Christianity is going to be. Christianity just evolves over time. And this is one of the reasons that I think that deconstruction is, in many ways, a deeply traditional form of Christianity. What you're doing is you're taking very seriously what the tradition is and always has been, because it's always been a tradition that is developing, that has arguments internal to itself about what you're going to claim for particular positions, for particular, defining what Christianity is at any time.
I appreciate that answer. Friends, I want to say really quick, thank you so much for being here. It means the world. Again, if you're watching live with us, please make sure you smash that like button. The more likes this video gets, the more YouTube will push it out into the algorithm that we're all trying to get into, so more people see this work. Thank you for being here. It means the world. Okay, why don't we go ahead and get back into the video? I appreciate you answering that, Kevin, because I really have always kind of wondered. Listen, I'm not an academic, okay? I was homeschooled for some years. I have some college under my belt. I don't know the answers to these questions, and I don't want to pretend that I'm an expert on something that I'm not an expert on. So it's just helpful to have someone who has deeply studied this stuff kind of give us a more a broader perspective on like these things are kind of always, you know, in negotiation to a degree. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Let's keep it going, friends. Thanks for being here. This is fun.
Here's the thing. If deconstruction is just about asking questions about your faith or experiencing doubts, then it is absolutely wrong and even unbiblical to declare war against it. However, if deconstruction really is a movement attempting to draw people away from biblical, historical, like original Orthodox Christianity,
You're laughing.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, this is so. If the claim that they're getting away from historical Christianity is problematic, he just quadrupled down on his mistake here. Because all of these terms that he's drawing out, the claim that it's orthodox, that it's biblical, that his form of Christianity is original, are all problematic. And some for exactly the reasons that we were talking about here, right? So biblical, again, he's not defending what has been the majority understanding of the Bible across Christian history. He's defending a kind of inerrantist, literalist vision of the Bible that emerged in the 1800s. So, and to put that together, to claim that the Bible is infallible and that it is literally true, you can't take the Bible seriously. I mean, this is one of the things that evangelicals claim that they are biblicists, but their actual approach to the Bible, which they think is taking the Bible seriously, is exactly what stops them from taking the Bible seriously. Because the Bible's a collection of different books by different people who disagreed with each other. And so if you're going to find some one message all the way through the Bible, you're going to have to impose it on the Bible. And again, I think this is exactly the kind of idolatry that, the deconstruction movement is concerned about, is that you're taking your view, you're picking particular verses out, you're pretending that that is the view of the Bible and that the view of the Bible is the view of God. And so then you're claiming that if I disagree with you, I disagree with God. And that's exactly the idol that deconstruction is aiming to try and take down. Similarly, if we talk about orthodoxy, I mean, orthodoxy means right belief. And at some point, if we're going to take the most ultimate sense of that, being orthodox just means believing what's true. But believing what's true, there's no one human being, one community that has the absolute view on what's true or an infallible view on what's true. So he can't claim to be orthodox in that sense. What he's got to mean is he's orthodox in relation to some community that agrees with him, right? And you can have that. You can have Eastern Orthodox. You can have Orthodox Catholic. You could have an Orthodox white modern evangelical, right? But at that point, you should only care about orthodoxy if you care to agree with that community or be a member of that community. And I think people who are practicing deconstruction should just say, yeah, I'm not worried about that form of orthodoxy, because what I'm after is orthodoxy in the broad sense. I want to know the truth, not just what your community believes is true. I also think the idea of original, and we got to this a little in your question. I mean, what would it mean to practice original Christianity? Right. If it meant to follow the teachings of Jesus, then we're going to have to do historical Jesus work and scholarship to figure out, and then we're going to be into a whole bunch of disagreements about who Jesus was, how he conceived of himself, anything like that. If we're going to go for some belief of Christians in like the 60s CE, well, then apparently we're going to have arguments about whether we should be following the Torah law, because that was all the rage in the 60s in Christianity. Because, of course, Christianity was a form of Judaism at the time. Well, that's a pretty hard thing to go back to, right? Are we going to be the Christians of, 100, 200? We're not going to have the doctrines of the Trinity, the doctrines of original sin then, because those hadn't developed yet. Are we going to be Christians of the 400s, right? I don't even know what it means to talk about being an original Christian, because Christianity is, from its beginning, a developing and evolving tradition.
Can you hold on one sec? I want to make sure. Is that what he said? He said original Christian? I just want to back that up and make sure I heard him correctly. Hold on.
Draw people away from biblical, historical, like original Orthodox Christianity.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, make sure, because I was like, wait, did he really say original? No, he did. Okay, yeah.
He did.
Right, what's the original?
Yeah, what's the original? It's kind of like having an argument about what's the original New York pizza, right? I mean, like,
well, Kevin, too far.
No, okay. I'm sorry.
But yeah,
I went into sacred territory there. Let's stick to the Bible.
That's some fundamentalism I'm not going to pivot on.
Yeah,
you know.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, well, you want to keep going then?
Yeah, let's keep going.
All right, sounds good.
Then we absolutely should be declaring war against it. Why? Because the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but have divine power to destroy strongholds. What strongholds? We destroy arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God, and take every thought captive to obey Christ.
Okay, so there he is quoting from 2 Corinthians 10, 4-6, right?
Yeah.
But I just want to note what kind of an ego you have to claim that you have the ability to take captive every thought. I mean, you've noted that this guy's kind of an apologist. Does he really think that he's got the ability, the arguments to dominate every thought another person might have that goes in a different direction from his? I mean, when Paul wrote this, it was already like overdone rhetoric for Paul, right? I mean, because we know that Paul thought a lot about himself, but Paul has to know that he didn't win every argument that he was in, and that he didn't convince everybody else. We have records of Paul disagreeing with Peter at Antioch and the two of them having a fight. We know that Paul was trying to get back in the good graces of the Jerusalem church with this kind of collection that he takes up for the church at the end. We know that Paul ended up on the wrong side of a whole bunch of people who rejected him as anti-Jewish, right? So yeah, Paul didn't do this. And if Paul didn't do it, you're not going to be able to dominate every thought another person has. And thinking that you can is really dangerous. I mean, thinking that you could take captive every thought another person has, if you take that seriously, right? We're not even talking about making laws and controlling what people do. We're talking about your belief that you, in fact, have a thought that is superior to the thoughts of everyone else, and that they don't have respectable thoughts on their own when they go in a different direction from you. Right. I just find that to be deeply, deeply problematic. So, yeah, I mean, you can pick that passage and go with it as your starting point. I wouldn't, and I'm really afraid of where we go once you do that.
I have no notes. I agree.
Okay.
You're preaching.
Now, what is deconstruction?
Here we go.
This is like the $1 million question. And here's the short answer. It kind of depends who you're talking to.
Great.
Okay. Like I just said a moment ago, everyone seems to be using the word to mean different things. And so if you were to ask 10 different people to define deconstruction, you may get 11 different answers. Okay. Because people are using it to mean everything from, like I said before, asking questions about maybe some secondary doctrine, like how old is the earth? You know, how long are those days? Or how should we baptize? Or whatever, all the way to the other end of the spectrum, where people are just outright leaving the faith altogether.
Really quick, I should point this out. Even this statement, his first half of it, where he gives these secondary doctrines, the age of the earth or baptism, in many traditions, those are not secondary. I mean, Ken Ham would love a word with Tim Barnett on the age of the earth, and if that's a gospel-centric issue. Many Baptists would love to argue about baptism, and if you do it with an infant or an adult, if that's secondary or not. So even that statement, I think, just shows like, wait, so who's the authority that gets to dictate what's secondary and what's primary besides Tim Barnett just declaring it so? Like, because I think so, these issues are secondary. And meanwhile, Ken Ham is like, no, the age of the earth is absolutely a primary issue. And many fundamentalists would agree with you on that. So I just want to point that out. Even that statement doesn't really add up with the claim that, like, oh, I'm giving you some kind of objective truth about what's primary and what's secondary. They're still very much debated, even inside of the evangelical world of fundamentalism.
Yeah. I would want to note, so at this point, I mean, like what he's saying here is actually entirely rational. It's probably the most like coherent and rational thing when he says like uh, people disagree on what deconstruction means, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
ironically, he doesn't talk a lot about Derrida. But this is one of the places that he actually comes closest to understanding deconstruction, because what he's articulating is that people have different constructions of the word in their heads that they think about, and we don't all mean the same thing by it. And the reality is that all of our words, all of our ideas are relational with each other,
Right.
that we construct them, that we come up with them. But then we ought to, once we realize that, be able to question them and challenge them and ask questions about, if your construction of this doesn't agree with my construction, like, how does that work out? How am I supposed to make sense of that? How am I supposed to land? So there is this point in here
For sure.
where he was very close to actually figuring out and being able to articulate on the grounds of like a good account of deconstruction what's actually going on. Unfortunately, it's exactly at this point that he's going to go off the rails in the opposite direction. Because, well, we'll see, like after saying, what does it mean? Well, it depends on who you're asking. And there's a whole bunch of different things. He's immediately going to spin around and then talk about what he thinks is the unbiased presentation of what deconstruction really is. So,
really quick, I'm not sure if in this video, are we going to get into separating out deconstruction in the philosophical sense of what Jacques Derrida meant versus the more common use, or do you want to break that down really quick now for the audience? Because I don't want to lose this. There is an official like philosophical framework that's called deconstruction.
Yeah.
A philosopher named Jacques Derrida popularized it. That's a whole different discussion than how people in layman's terms and in this world use the term deconstruction. Can you just give people a very quick primer of the difference? Because I want to make sure people know what we're talking about.
Yeah. So deconstruction in terms of philosophy is a philosophy especially associated with Derrida. And it starts out as a kind of theory of language, that language and words and the way that they work, they take on meanings from particular contexts, particular places, what people are doing with them at that time, and that they're not like eternal. It's when you say something, right? If I tell you a story right now, and then 10 years later, tell the same story, it won't be exactly the same story, even if I used exactly the same words, because the context in which I am telling it will have changed. Right. So even if we think about basic things like you dial a phone today, well, when you dial a phone today, it doesn't mean the same thing that it meant when I was a kid and you dialed a phone. Right. Because even though we use
Right.
the same words, even
Right.
though we're doing even though our words, our language just isn't that stable. It's constantly moving around. And then once you realize this, you also realize that the world is pretty much constructed by how we use our words.
Yep.
And so everything becomes a kind of movement, and you can ask the question, why are you using that word in that way? What happens if I play on the way that you use that word and use it in a different way? What if I change the context of it? So this becomes the basis for the kind of philosophical approach. In terms of what we're talking about in deconstruction as a movement, then we move it to kind of looking at our beliefs and recognizing that our particular beliefs at any given time don't have absolute certainty, are not infallible beliefs, are not, given to us directly by God, but that they are constructed by human beings too.
Right.
And that we can ask questions about them. We can critique those, we can interrogate those. And oftentimes that means that we're going to leave behind the beliefs that we held before. So it is a kind of disposition towards our beliefs and calling into question the authority on which they rest.
Yeah. Yeah. So just to be clear for the audience, there's a linguistic and philosophical term that has to do with how we think about words and how words can change meaning over time based on context, right? I mean, one example I always say is like, if we were writing a book now and I was like, wow, LeBron James was on fire last night, and that gets read 1,000 years from now, they might think that I meant he was literally burning, when in reality what I meant was he was doing really well at his basketball game, right? Because words in context can change. The other side of how we have been using it and how it kind of got picked up in the cultural framework we exist in is really being able to renegotiate beliefs that you were taught were given to you by God, and kind of realizing that actually all of this comes through other humans. Now, we can certainly say that we believe things might be God inspired or God breathed, but that doesn't make them absolutely true or even certain. We have to kind of negotiate how we navigate those things, and kind of it takes a lot of work, but we have to be willing to be a little more flexible in what we thought were absolute understandings of the universe. Like, for example, Ken Ham might say that the Bible's clear on Genesis 1 and 2, but it turns out there's actually a whole different conversation that has been happening in church history about Genesis 1 and 2 and what they mean. So deconstruction gives you permission to think about those things a little bit differently and come to, and this is most important, different answers from the same question. So there is a separation here. And in this context, we're talking about the latter, how we use it in this evangelical framework, etc. So, okay, cool. I just want to get that out of the way as we kind of keep moving.
And so here's kind of a tactical move when you're talking with someone and they're using the word deconstruction. You want to start by defining the term. So a good question to ask is, what do you mean by deconstruction?
Okay. And at this point, I think he's entirely right. And he's not just putting forward his own definition of deconstruction, which inevitably is going to carry his own presuppositions with him. He even suggests that you should start by asking the other person what they think deconstruction is. And it's from this point that he's just going to go in completely the opposite direction from what he's just said.
All right, here we go.
Here's what I want you to know. After we spent well over a year researching this book, the hardest sentence to write, okay? I don't know how many sentences there are, but there were 65,000 words in this book. And the hardest words to write, the hardest sentence to write was this one on the screen. It was our definition for deconstruction. And I'll tell you what, I can speak personally, I changed my mind about deconstruction. There was a time when I thought you could just add adjectives to the front of the word and that would somehow change its meaning, like good deconstruction versus bad deconstruction, or healthy deconstruction versus unhealthy deconstruction. But after the months and months and months of doing the deep dive into what's happening behind the hashtag deconstruction online and the hashtag Evangelical online, what you will find is nothing good and nothing healthy.
Wow. Nothing good and nothing healthy. I like a word, Tim.
Look how fast we went from, you should ask the other person what they mean by deconstruction, and then to there is nothing good, nothing healthy in all of this.
Oh my gosh.
It's really phenomenal.
Nothing. Zilch. Zero. Nada.
Nothing.
I guess all the people in my DMs who are like, hey, because I deconstructed, I can live a life without fear or guilt of burning in hell forever. Wow, just like, that is terrible. Or the people who were like, I got the courage to call out my pastor who was abusing me because of deconstruction. Yeah. Like, nothing good. No, nothing good at all.
Well, and I do want to note, so if you can go back to the end of that clip, back to the dark at the end of that.
I just wanted to read this off briefly so people can podcast and hear it. So just because he didn't say it, the way that they define deconstruction is the postmodern process of rethinking your faith, and this is in bold, without requiring scripture as a standard. Just keep that in mind as we keep navigating this. Okay, you said the end of the clip?
Okay. Yeah, if you can go back to the black. Okay, yeah, right before she talks.
All right, here we go.
So
should I play it?
Yeah, go ahead and play.
To what's happening behind the hashtag deconstruction online and the hashtag Evangelical online, what you will find is nothing good and nothing healthy.
Okay, so it's notable that this is one in a series of videos, and his co-author also does a series of videos. And what I note is that his co-author doesn't even want to support this kind of claim that she has. And she notes exactly what you have noted. So if we can go on, this is
Alisa Childers.
Alisa Childers, who's his co-author, and she has some things to say about deconstruction too. But let's play what she wants to say.
You got it.
Every deconstruction story is a little bit different. There are different wounds behind each story. Some wounds are very great and very profound.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
yes. Yes, Alisa.
Yeah, right?
Yes.
And this is one of the reasons that we're going to respond to him and what he's saying, because she actually is much more tempered in what she wants to say. He goes very much more to this kind of absolutist stance in saying there's nothing good in deconstruction, which throws out the experiences of so many people who have deconstructed, who find some level of liberation, some level of freedom, some level of healing from religious trauma by what they've done. And I find it amazing the turn that he took from, ask the other person what they think deconstruction means to just immediately, there is nothing good whatsoever in it. It's remarkable.
Well, I love that. And before we get back to the rest of the video, I just want to say, friends, thank you so much for being here. If you could do me a favor, right now there are 380 people watching this live. If you can give this video a like, that would be so helpful. It gets this video to more people in YouTube's algorithm. I appreciate you being here. If you want to support the work that we do, any super chat or donation goes right to the organization to make this work completely paywall free and accessible. It allows me to bring on people like Dr. Kevin Carnahan to help you find a better path forward in your faith. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. It means the world. We have a lot coming up this year. I know what's going on politically. If you follow our work, we're totally in tune with that. We have a lot of plans, and your support makes this work possible. Thank you so much. Okay, let's get back to it then. So, yeah, Alisa's like, hey, the wounds are real. And I'm like, yes, Alisa, the wounds are real. And Tim's like, there is nothing, not one iota of positivity or goodness that comes out of deconstruction.
That is so, this is another thing that I would say is problematic on traditional Christian grounds, is that's very Manichaean. It's very absolute. There's evil, there's good, and it divides the world into those two things. And this goes along with that kind of dominating and war language, because if this is where you live, right? If where you live is that deconstruction has nothing good in it, then why would he come on a show where he's going to discuss something with someone who is deconstructed, right? It's a problematic view from the very beginning.
Good point. All right, let's keep it going.
Here is the definition that we came up with. We think we're accurately describing deconstruction this way.
Okay. So note also, again, he's gone from, there's lots of different definitions of deconstruction, and maybe you ought to ask other people to, we think this is the accurate definition of deconstruction. And inevitably, once he puts this forward, it's not going to be some unbiased definition of deconstruction. It's going to be one that plays into and is understood from his particular worldview, his particular construction of reality. So it's not an unbiased one, but he's going to present it as if it is unbiased.
It is a postmodern process of rethinking your faith without requiring Scripture as a standard. Now, all those words are important, okay? It's actually not just a destination. It is a transition. It is a process. It is a methodology. It's not simply a that. It's a how people undergo this thing. And so it's a process, but it's a certain kind of process. It's a postmodern process. What we mean by that is the objective isn't truth. The objective is something else, okay? Oftentimes, personal happiness, personal preferences, the true for me kind of truth. So they sometimes use that language, but they're not referring to objective truth.
This is a big thing I hear often. This, we don't care about objective truth. And then again, there's a lot of language about how postmodernism is the bad guy. Kind of like how right-wingers are like, oh, they're all Marxists. Like as if inherently we have to believe that Marxism is inherently bad without being able to interrogate why we think that. So I would love your thoughts on this his definition and then his conclusion.
So number one, I can't take an evangelical in our current political situation seriously if they're going to tell me that other people don't take objective truth seriously.
Yes, I mean,
we live in a world where like Trump has no notion of truth or objectivity or any of that. And given the way that evangelicals line up behind him, this just seems to me an objection that is off the rails from the very beginning.
Can I interject here real quick?
Yeah,
Do you mind?
go ahead.
I'm sorry to cut you off. I have to just really emphasize this point because I cannot tell you how maddening it is to watch people like Tim Barnett, who really have a chip on their shoulder for everything outside of their evangelical tradition, actually watch their own people, and maybe even Tim himself, I don't know, support a man who will tell people that the election was stolen in 2020. A bold-faced, objectively proven lie. And somehow people like me are the problem because I have renegotiated or I've thought more widely about my faith tradition. Like, it's so incredibly disingenuous to get on your high horse and lecture me about objective truth when your own base, at one point, 3/4 of white evangelicals statistically believe that Joe Biden was not the lawful, duly elected president of the United States of America. Talk about trading the truth for a lie. So if you can't affirm basic, objectively verifiable realities about the here and now, the election was not stolen. Joe Biden is the legal president. The January 6th attack was violent. If you can't affirm things that we can see in front of our very eyes with our eyeballs, how am I going to be able to trust you about things that happened 2,000 years ago?
Just did what appears to be a Nazi salute. Like, you can give all sorts of other interpretations of it, but don't deny what we're seeing in front of our eyes, right? But this is the idea that it's the progressives that have given up on the idea of objective truth is just willy-nilly. That's absurd. Now, I will say I do have some sympathy with his dislike for the language of my truth as opposed to somebody else's truth. And that's because I think so. Part of the problem here is this is epistemology, which is the study of knowledge, and it's really hard. It's hard stuff once you get into epistemology and working it through. I would say that there's better language for doing this.
Sure.
So we need to make a distinction between number one, like capital T truth. What is absolutely true? What is, irregardless of what we think, what is true, right? And that, it seems to me, is something that we all believe in at some point because we recognize we can be wrong. And if you recognize that you can be wrong, then you believe that there is something beyond your own position. There's something beyond. So then the question is, what are people doing with the language of my truth, since they aren't actually denying that there is some capital T truth? And what's happening there is what we call in epistemology justification, a question about justification. So I can be justified in holding a belief if I've done the work to try and check if it's true or not. Okay. I am justified in a belief if I look outside the window right now and I see it's a cloudy day and there's water coming down, right? I'm going to be like, oh, it's raining. And I'm justified in believing that because I've looked outside and I've seen it. Now, there's a difference between me being justified in believing it and having it be true. Okay. Because it might be that my neighbor is standing there with a hose outside of my window and he's shooting water up in the air and it happens to be a cloudy day. I might be wrong. Right. But I've done my work. I looked outside. I'm not just saying it's raining for the heck of it. Right. I've done the work. I put in the work to be justified. And the claim here is that if people have done the work to be justified in their belief, then their beliefs are due some level of respect, right? That they have done what they needed to do to check and see if they are true. And if they've done that work, then there should be some level of respect for their beliefs. Now, I think most people, when they talk about my truth, what they're saying is, look, I've done the work. I have looked at this stuff. I've investigated it, right? And I've come to my own conclusions and I'm justified in this. But they don't want to say simply on that basis, oh, this is for sure infallible, absolute capital T truth, because I might be wrong about this.
Yes.
And this is just the situation for human beings. At best, we are ever, justified in beliefs. We never can step outside of ourselves and be able to look beyond what we have that is our justification for believing something and see that it is true independent of ourselves. In order to do that, you would have to be God. And again, this is one of those places where deconstruction is very anti-idolatry. You're exactly saying, I'm not God,
Right.
so I'm not going to claim that my beliefs are infallible or certain or given to me directly by God. I'm not going to do any of that. What I am going to claim is I've done the work, and so my beliefs are due a certain amount of respect. Yeah. And I am not going to give those up simply because your community or your interpretation disagree with me. As a matter of fact, if I did that, I would be abandoning being justified in my beliefs. Right. I would be giving that up. And so the language of my truth, while I'm a little bit uncomfortable with it, I think if you interpret it carefully, there's actually a deep thing that's going on in what people are trying to claim, that they've done the work, and for this reason, their beliefs are due respect. And I just don't think that where he's starting at is going to get at any of that, because saying, oh, you're just denying truth, will run in the face of what these people are going to claim about themselves and everything else. It's just going to make them look absurd, which is a useful debating technique, but it's not useful in actually understanding other people.
No notes. I love this. Let's keep going. This is great. You're killing it.
And of course, they reject the Bible as a standard, which I'll prove to you in a second here. Now, there is a growing movement that the church is is just not aware of. And so what I want to do...
Fascism, Christian nationalism. Let's see if it's there. Maybe he means that.
That's not going to be it.
Expose the underbelly of what's going on in deconstruction. The first thing you need to know is this deconstruction movement really is a movement. We call it an explosion in the book because a movement usually goes in one direction, but this thing's going everywhere. But it starts with evangelicalism, or at least that's what they're calling it. That's why they're ex-evangelical when they go through this process. But they may end up in atheism or agnosticism or some other place.
Or progressive Christians.
These guys are getting organized. In fact,
we're getting
organized.
What's new? We're getting organized. Here I am in my guest bedroom with my producer. It's my stream deck, just trying to make it work.
This is the seamy. You are the seamy underbelly.
Here I am. If anyone knows where the organizational funding is for this work, please send them my way. Like, that would be awesome. Or make a donation. That's fine too. I'll take grassroots money. But if you know where all of this seedy underbelly stuff is happening, Tim, shoot me an email, bro. I need help.
I've been looking for that seedy underbelly money my whole life.
I really have, man. I want the private jet. Come on, hook me up. Okay, we'll keep going.
What about this, right? Apostasy has always been around. This is organized apostasy. What do I mean by that? There's conferences. I mean, like, there was Decon 2023 last year.
What? What is? Hold on. I don't know what that is. What is I'm sorry. I gotta look this up. What was it called? Decon
2023. I guess.
Wait, was that the digital? There isn't even a website. I mean, I'm on the internet now. What is he talking about? Is the 2023 Decon conference agenda US EPA? I mean, what? What?
This is, and imagine taking this out as your steamy underbelly of this movement. The problem is they're organized. You're standing in front of a focus on the family backdrop as you're giving this talk, right?
Wait, I found it. I'm sorry. Kevin, I stand corrected. Here's the Facebook group. They have 36 likes and 42 followers. And their last video did 4 likes. Here it is, everyone. Super organized and big time. Decon 2023. I'm dying.
Yeah.
This is real.
This is the seamy underbelly of organization that the evangelicals are fighting. By the way, to whatever extent that deconstructionists are organized, It's because they learned it from evangelicals. I mean, the evangelicals are exactly the people that organize themselves as a minority to try and politically take over this country. It's really boggling. The entire thing is really
I can't let
boggling.
this go. Tim Barnett has the audacity to point out Decon 2023 as an example of a well-organized underbelly movement infiltrating the church, but won't call out the $81 million a year Turning Point USA that has its entire separate faith arm called Turning Point Faith that partners with mega churches, mega white evangelical churches to bring in people like Charlie Kirk, or I don't know, host former President Donald Trump before he got elected after his convicted felonies at Dream City Church. Tim won't talk about that. But Decon 2023 with 40 likes on Facebook is the threat.
Organized apostasy.
I'm dying. I my head's gonna fall off of my shoulders. My brain just fell out of my head. He cannot be for real, Kevin. He cannot be for real.
Oh, he's going to go off on this for a little while. So let's let him
all
go.
right, fair. Sorry, I'm cooking now.
No,
I am
you're
shook.
fine.
I am shook. Here we go.
And here are some of the players that were speaking. I'm a speaker. I travel around teaching people to defend the faith. These people are teaching people how to deconstruct the faith.
Oh boy, here we go.
And you may not recognize them, most of these people, but if you were on TikTok, you would. Because half of these people are just TikTokers, okay? That have 500,000 to 250,000 followers.
Okay, who are they though?
So,
who are they?
He's gonna name one. That's all he's gonna do.
Probably,
here.
yeah.
But I just want to note the only reason that I am familiar with Tim at all is because he's on TikTok.
Right. Yeah, and Instagram and podcasts.
Yeah, it's so funny the derisive way that he says they're TikTokers, and I'm like, the only reason I know you is because you are a TikToker. So
this man is off the rails.
It's impressive. It's impressive. Okay, so he will now name one speaker apparently.
I can't wait. Who could it be?
There's a guy on TikTok and he dresses like a gay Jesus, calls himself Jesus, and all he does is like ridicule Christianity.
Wait, this Jergay?
Tim,
that's your dude? Not Dale McClellan? I mean, there are so many other names that you can pull from that are really helping people deconstruct. Jergais is like a satire comedian person who just makes like funny content pointing out the hypocrisy of the church. That's your deconstruction like lighthouse? Oh my. You know why he's saying this, though? You know why he's saying this?
Yeah.
Because he knows his audience, right, will be aghast at a gay man cosplaying as gay Jesus because, oh my God, the horror. This is what our kids are listening to on TikTok. I can't believe it. It's complete scare tactic. It's not incredible. Yeah. It's not, Jergais, I think their pronouns are he, but if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. You know, his account, he's out there, but he's not doing major influential deconstruction work. He's a commentator. Dale McClellan, that's someone you want to call out, Tim. You want to go after the big fish. Go after your Dale McClellans of the world. I mean, they're the ones doing the most work right now.
Yeah, but realize if you go after Dan McClellan, you've got to explain why it is that he's gotten awards from the Society of Biblical Literature for being a public scholar, right? Jergais is a much easier target to go after. And just like you say, it's going to get that visceral reaction from his audience. And so that's exactly what he's going for.
Oh, keep it going. I'm trying to keep my composure. I'm aghast. There we go. Keep it going.
Christianity. Challenge Christianity.
Okay. Well, I want to say something about.
Wait, really quick, because I cut it off. Can I just replay that whole clip? I kind of cut him in the middle of that, so there's context here. So my bad, guys. I don't mean to interrupt, but is it? Let's see. Is it? Here we go.
Last year.
All right, here we go.
And here are some of the players that were speaking. I'm a speaker. I travel around teaching people
to
defend the faith. These people are teaching people how to deconstruct the faith. And you may not recognize them, most of these people, but if you were on TikTok, you would. Because half of these people are just TikTokers, okay? That have 500,000 to 250,000 followers.
All right, next clip. Here we go.
Jesus. There's a guy on TikTok, and he dresses like a gay Jesus, calls himself Jesus, and all he does is like ridicule Christianity. mock Christianity, challenge Christianity.
Okay, go ahead.
Now, I also want to say, like, Jesus, I generally like his stuff, so I don't have a problem with it. But I also recognize that what he's mocking is not Christianity. It's modern, white, American, Protestant, evangelical Christianity, right?
Right.
And this is, again, just another one of those places where you're confusing your version of Christianity with the entirety of the tradition. And, he doesn't seem to be able to see that there's a distinction between those things. And this goes into exactly that level of idolatry, confusing yourself with the Christian tradition, confusing that with God. And then, you're representing God out here.
Friends, before we get to the next clip, again, thank you so much for being here. Please give this video a like. It means the world. It helps get it recommended to more people. There are 400 people watching right now in this moment. Maybe you're watching this as a replay. Also give this video a like. You're not off the hook. It really helps our work. If you want to support the work that we do, make sure you follow us on YouTube, on Instagram. You can do a super chat. You can do a donation. We are grassroots funded. We, unfortunately, do not have any billionaires who like us because we critique billionaires, but we'll take their money. Until that happens, any donations really help this work be made possible, completely paywall free. We do not charge for anything. There's no Patreon, nothing like that. This is all available to the community and to the world because we believe in helping people find a better path forward in their faith, which is what we're doing right now. Back with Dr. Kevin Carnahan. Okay. I hopefully the funniest parts of the video are over, so I stop cackling so hard because, wow. Let's keep it going to the next clip. Tim Barnett on what deconstruction really is and why, if you're a Christian, you should stay away from it. Here we go.
He's one of the speakers, and we could go down the list. What you need to know is if you type in #deconstruction, you are going to be catapulted into a world that is unlike anything that you've probably been exposed to. You're going to be exposed to people who are calling beliefs that you hold toxic. They don't try to refute it because that would mean that there's something true to refute.
Okay, I just want to think about that last claim. They're not trying to refute your beliefs because if they tried to refute it, it would mean that there's something true to your beliefs. I don't even know what the hell that means. It makes no sense to me. It's just, it's like Olympic level mental gymnastics.
And people are refuting it. If you do #deconstruction, you'll see tons of creators, myself included, you included, that are refuting or are at least offering a counter perspective to that take. And also, Tim says that if you type that in, you'll see things that you've never seen before. That's an indictment on your audience, bro. That's an indictment on your audience. Like what? The fact that not all people who are claiming to be Christians think that the Bible is, inerrant? Like, is that mind-blowing? Like, if it is,
right.
Wow.
You will see people who are not cis, straight.
Right.
Like this is going to happen. And you know what? You should probably be exposed to that.
You'll even see a person cosplaying as gay Jesus. I know, it's unbelievable.
Gay Jesus. It's horrifying. I do think even at the level of Jesus, I do think there's something useful in it though, because what they're doing is exactly anti-idolatry work. Because to mock something, right, is to remove it from the sacred. It is to make it something that you can ask questions about. So, and this is exactly why it's really hard to mock Jesus because he's not claiming to be sacred, right? He has no sacred cows. So there's nothing that you can mock there. Whereas he's mocking a lot of this white American evangelicalism because they have so many sacred cows that it's like shooting fish in a barrel, to mix my metaphors now. But yeah. I mean, this is useful stuff that people are doing. And I'm sorry if you're shocked by it, if you find it on the internet.
Okay, keep going.
Yeah. Instead, they're just labeled as toxic. You believe Jesus is the only way? Toxic. You believe that Jesus died for your sins? Toxic. You believe in biblical sexuality? Toxic.
Okay, go ahead, Kevin. It's all you.
This is an interesting. I mean, so the thing is, each one of these claims can be toxic, right? Yes. I mean, there's no doubt that. So George Lindbeck, a great theologian, has an example where he says, "Look, even the claim Jesus is Lord can be a kind of horrible and non-Christian claim. Because if the Crusader says it while, stabbing a child during the Crusades, says Jesus is Lord as they're doing that, that is in fact a toxic claim. So there's nothing that is inherently a claim that cannot be toxic, that cannot be harmful. And if somebody's telling you this claim was used harmfully against me, that's something you should take seriously. That's something that you shouldn't just go and say, there's nothing useful in this critique of Christianity. You should go and you should ask questions about it and look at it. I also think like the biblical sexuality thing is a great example of the idolatry of this position. I mean, yes, guess what? The whole idea that there is a biblical sexuality is entirely a creation of modern white evangelicalism, because the Bible has no concept of sexuality at all. There's ideas of sex, but there's no ideas of like stable sexual dispositions that's developed in the Bible. So if you find a biblical sexuality, it wasn't there, you put it there, right?
And might I add, I don't recommend following all the prescriptions of how the Bible talks about sex. I don't recommend taking your neighbor's wife. I don't recommend sleeping with your concubines or sleeping with your second wife's maidservant or your cousins. I don't recommend any of that, just to be very clear.
Yes. And that's going to horrify him, because now you're not taking the authority of the Bible seriously.
Well, right. Clearly, I don't understand the real context of the scriptures by just reading it, Like, that's only reserved for people like Tim, who can just cite verses at whim when they want to prove a point. But when I cite verses, the context, you don't understand, yada, yada, yada.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, goodness. Okay. I got to say, Kevin, I did not anticipate laughing this hard. And given the fascist hellscape that we're walking into, today feels very cathartic. I'm glad we're doing this live today to give all of us a break.
You did not see Jagazes coming, man. You did not know.
I didn't. I wish I knew. I would have messaged Jagazes and been like, "Yo, come on the live." I never talked to them before, but would love to. Anyway, okay, let's keep it going, friends. Again, thanks for being here. Hopefully, you're having as good of a time as Kevin and I are. This is just so much fun. This is a great reprieve from what's happening out in the world, which of course we'll be covering. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, follow us on Instagram and TikTok, yada yada. Give the video a like, please. It means the world. Let's keep it going. We have some. We're 8 minutes into an 18-minute video. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
I want you to hear from the deconstructionists themselves.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is Jo Luhmann and her husband, and in a video that is called "Our Journey of Faith Deconstruction," I just want you to listen. This is about a 1.5-minute clip, but listen to what she says, okay? Because I actually agree how she's describing deconstruction is correct. But we're going to look at how to respond to it.
So we landed, and this is the thing with deconstruction that I really think it's important to understand. Everyone lands wherever they land. Right. There is no right place to land with deconstruction. Some people land away from faith. Some people land in a different type of faith. Some people become agnostic. Some people become a different type of Christian. Some people become atheist. And all of those routes in deconstruction are valid and to be respected. But now my beliefs are mine, and I own them, and I feel proud of them, and I have the healthiest relationship with God, and my spiritual life, my faith life is the strongest it has ever been. But it doesn't look like traditional Christianity looks like. And I'm okay with that. I'm fine with that, because nobody gets to tell you whether God approves of you or not.
Right.
Nobody.
And nobody should be able to tell you what your faith needs to look like, because that's dependent on you and the work you do. Nobody should be able to tell you what your beliefs are.
No. Nobody can look at you and say, you know what, you're wrong. Because if you've done the work honestly and thoroughly, then how dare people tell you like, no, what you believe is wrong because I say so? No.
And what I'm saying is, the moment you start to believe when somebody tells you this is what Christianity looks like, this is how you have to walk it out, you are then stepping into somebody else's identity and somebody else's shoes, and you're not being who you are. And later on down the road, you're going to feel the trauma, you're going to feel the pain, and you're going to be like, son of a gun, I have to freaking deconstruct that.
Okay, really quick.
Okay.
Can I point out two things here? Number one, essentially what they just said was the right-wing equivalent of do your own research. So just FYI on that. But, I mean, more importantly, I just want to point this out. First off, I mean, this video is from literally, what, 5 years ago? 6 years ago now, almost, in March. It has 7,000 views. And as in this screenshot, Joe has 1,000 subscribers. Tim paints this picture, right, of some, like, widespread crazy takeover of the church called Deconstruction with their conferences and their big name leaders who are influencing millions. And we're looking at people that like, and Joe, by the way, Joe Lumen has largely dropped out of like this world. She's doing her own thing with her family. I wish her the best. But like, again, the way that like Tim starts off the conversation of like, you're not going to believe how widespread this is. And then pulls this tiny clip with 7,000 views on it, with two people just talking about how maybe they came to their own conclusions after doing their own research, a very right-wing talking point, by the way, just applied differently. Yeah. Now this is the end of the world. This is how crazy things have gotten. Oh my God, it's insufferable.
I think it's notable that he wants to kind of paint deconstruction in a particular way. And if this is the best examples that he can come up with of how problematic deconstruction is, he's in trouble. Because he's going to have to claim that they're saying things in this clip that they are clearly not saying. So he's going to claim after this, right? Oh, they're denying objective truth. Well, I certainly didn't hear them denying objective truth anyplace in that video. I mean, what they're doing is they're actually saying you need to put in the work to find what's true. They do say where you land, you can land in different places. But again, that goes back to the distinction between truth and justification.
Right.
Different people are going to land in different places because we're finite individuals. We're human beings, and we are justified in coming to different conclusions. And so long as we have done the work that is necessary to come to those conclusions, we can be justified in that. And it turns out that's how epistemology actually works. There can be rational people who disagree about whether God exists, or whether you should be a Muslim or a Christian, or whether you should be a Hindu or a Christian, or even whether you should be different kinds of Christian, right? Now, there are dumb versions of all of these things too,
of course,
but there's also entirely reasonable versions. And what they're saying is simply, you should respect the people who have put in the work and come to their own conclusions about these things. And you shouldn't abandon that work just because somebody else tells you. And I'm trying to figure out, what is there to disagree with in that basic set of claims? I mean, that's got to be right. And in order to disagree with it, he's going to have to kind of gin up them into saying something that they aren't really saying.
Let's see what he has to say.
Dude, what I want to do is highlight 3 things that became really clear in that video and kind of back it up with some more deconstructionists. The first thing is that when it comes to deconstruction, there is no correct destination, okay? There's no correct destination. You heard her say, there's no right place to land when it comes to deconstruction. Some people land here, other people there. It doesn't matter. All these beliefs, wherever you land, equally valid. And that's because they're treating deconstruction of faith a lot like your vacation destination. Let me ask you, what is the correct vacation destination? Well, I mean, it depends. If you like Hawaii, like you like the beach, or maybe you like to hikes, you want to go to the Grand Canyon or something. It just depends on your preferences. And in a similar way, it doesn't matter where you land when it comes to religion, because they treat religion as if it's a matter of personal preference, not objective truth. And so when you deconstruct it, you're going after whatever makes you happy.
Okay.
This is just
no right way.
Sorry.
No.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no fine. I mean, what he's just done is he's entirely made up something that they didn't say, put it into their mouths because he wants to disagree with it. They never said that coming to a relationship with God is like looking for a vacation spot. As a matter of fact, what they likened it to was a search for truth. And it turns out that in the search for truth, we can come to different conclusions, right? Yep. That's not getting rid of objective truth. It's actually just admitting where we are as human beings, that we don't have access to infallible truth. We don't have access to absolute certainty, and we shouldn't pretend that we do. They
Right.
also certainly don't claim that deconstruction is all about personal preference. I mean, that's absurd. People who deconstruct often have to go through really horrible experiences
Yep.
with, getting kicked out of communities, getting rejected by their families. If this were a matter of personal preferences, it would be much easier just to say, you know what, I'm going to stay in this place, because
Right.
why would I go through that, right? The reason that they go through it is exactly because they want to interrogate their truths and bring them into accord with reality, with truth. That doesn't mean that everybody's going to agree at the end.
Yep.
That's an absurd claim that simply pursuing the truth is always going to get you to the same conclusion. He's just fundamentally wrong about that. But he has to push all of this stuff onto this video where they clearly didn't say any of it. And I think if he, in his year of researching this, right, couldn't actually find any deconstructionists that are saying the things that he's saying they say, that's probably because they don't exist. Right? He's giving a definition and a picture of deconstruction that just doesn't fit with how anybody actually does it. Maybe it wasn't a good year of research for him. I don't know, but he did find Jesus. So
that's true. That's all fair. Okay, let's keep going. This is great. Masterclass.
But you get the point. No right way, no right destination. Now, Jesus actually talks about ways and destinations, okay? Matthew 7, he actually says, enter through the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is broad that leads to his destination, destruction. And there are many who enter through it. And the gate is small, and the way, there's another way. And it's narrow, and it leads to another destination, life. And there are few who find it. So he says there's no right way, and there's no right destination. Jesus said, actually, there is a right way, and there is a good destination, and that's called life.
Okay, what are your thoughts on that? This is very classic.
Yeah.
I hear this all the time.
Right. So this is one place where what's going to happen is we're going to pull a particular verse out of its context, and we're going to interpret it to mean exactly what he wants it to mean. And this is exactly the problem, right? What the deconstructionist is trying to do is to ask questions about whether we should trust your particular interpretation of verses or what you're doing with them. I can play the same game. Anybody can play the same game. So if you could hit play on the video for a second.
That's called life.
Okay, so here we go. This is my Timu version of his Bible thing, right? So if we go back just a few verses from the Bible verse that he cited, we find this: do not judge, that you may not be judged. For the judgment you make will be for the judgment you make, you will be judged, and the measure you give will be the measure you get. Matthew 7:1-2. And note, right? So your unjustified judgment, putting yourself in the place of God, as opposed to God's justified judgment, judging you for idolatry. Now, it may
No, Kevin, is it me? Guys, am I still here?
Aren't judging others.
Wait, Kevin, you dropped off. Are you back? Kevin. Oh, thank God. I thought that we had a Jezebel spirit in the computer machine. I'm so sorry.
There
Are you back
go.
now?
I'm getting a problem. Okay, yeah. It might be that.
Oh, you're gone. He's gone. Okay. Oh, no. Oh, no. What happened? Now I got a stonewall. He's calling back. Kevin, are you there, Kevin?
I'm bouncing in and out. I don't know what's happening.
No problem. Let's try it again. Go ahead. From the top.
Okay. Okay. So it might be that the narrow way is the way of those people who don't judge each other, right? Those people who find a way to love other people. And it might be that the way that he's pursuing is the way of judgment, which it's really easy to find ways to judge other people. Now, my point is not that I have a better reading of the Bible than he has here, right? My point is all of us as human beings are reading the Bible and trying to figure out what it means, and what we put forward as our interpretations are human interpretations of the Bible. And
Right.
so you can't just, pick out one verse from Matthew and pretend that it's responding to deconstructionists today, because it's not responding to deconstructionists any more than Matthew 7 is responding to Tim giving his talk. The
Right.
Bible is a repository that starts a conversation, but what he's doing is he's confusing that with his own position, which is exactly what deconstructionism is trying to fight against.
I love that. Friends,
I made
really,
it through that, and I did not fall offline.
Thank
There we
God.
go.
Thank God. Friends, if you're just tuning in, welcome. We are the New Evangelicals. This is a live stream that we will keep up after we're live. If you could do me a favor and hit that like button, smash the like button. It helps this video get out to more people. We do a lot of this work. We go live as often as we can. This is a great conversation. Thank you for being here. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Okay, let's get back into it. This is really great stuff. Kevin, you're once again putting on a masterclass of so many different topics. Here we go. Your verse.
So the first thing is
Yeah,
no
my
correct destination. The second thing is there's no ending to the process. There's no ending, no finality, because when you construct a new belief, you have to deconstruct that belief. And then you reconstruct and deconstruct. And you're on a hamster wheel running this thing, and it becomes existentially exhausting.
Okay. I think this is fascinating because what he's just done is given an account of what some classical theologians imagined heaven was like, and then said it's existentially exhausting and it's like being on a hamster wheel. So if we go back in the history of Christian theology, there has always been an idea that as you approach God, you have to give up your conceptions of God. This is what St. John of the Cross calls the dark night of the soul, where he says, if you want to meet with God, you have to give up who you think God is, because God is...
Oh, no. Let's all pray over Kevin's computer right now.
God.
You're back.
Offline again.
You're back.
Okay. So as long as you have that conception of God, you'll never be able to meet God. And
oh, no. I rebuke you, devil. I rebuke you. Someone commented, the internet can't handle Kevin. No, I agree, Chris. I'm with you.
That's exactly the problem. I wish I had an immediate way to...
Okay, you're gone again. Friends, I gotta be honest. I needed this live. I really did. Like, I have not laughed this hard in a long time. I'm having a great time with all of you. Thanks for being here. I love going live, man. I just love being in the moment with you guys. It just means the world. And look, I was able to stall enough to bring Kevin back in. So look at me go.
So let me pick up where I was.
Yeah.
Gregory of Nyssa, a 4th century theologian, comes along and says, this must be what heaven is like, is continually giving up your particular conceptions of God and coming ever closer to God. Because he says the distance between us and God is infinite. So how many ideas do you have to give up? Well, an infinite number of ideas. And so heaven must be perpetually coming closer to God and giving up those conceptions that you had before, coming ever closer and experiencing more and more the glory of God. And when does that end, he says? Well, never. That's an eternal ascent to God. And that sounds a lot like what he's complaining about here. And he's saying, oh, that's existentially exhausting, right? This is a horrible way to go. It's just fascinating to me that he could get there.
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
And actually, this is what Derek Webb said. So responding to Kevin Max. Kevin Max used to be DC Talk. You remember? Any Jesus freaks here? Okay, so Kevin Max tweeted that deconstruction is greater than reconstruction. Huh? What's going on there? Why is it greater than reconstruction? Well, Derek Webb from Caedmon's Call, he chimes in And he basically says this: agreed, the cycle of and reconstruction is existentially exhausting. What I found helpful is to simply stop constructing. Belief is just too heavy a term other than maybe cause and effect. I'm done believing. To which everyone in the room asks, do you believe that? Right.
And by the way, I mean, I just need to point out, this post has 2 reposts, 6 quotes, and 58 monster likes. I mean, these are people just really in public conversation with some friends that Tim picks up as like, look at how popular these people are, influencing millions of people for the satanic and evil deconstruction agenda. It's like, dude, this tweet has 58 likes on it, bro. Like, are you kidding me? Go watch one Charlie Kirk tweet and see how many likes he gets and go critique that. I mean, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Sorry, end of rant.
Well, no, this is, I just want to say, like, again, I think what he's going to do with this is a very bad reading of what's happening in this exchange, right? So when they say, I'm giving up on believing, surely they don't mean I'm not going to believe anything anymore. Obviously, that's not right. What I think you should take from this is that they're talking about different ways of believing things. So like one way that you can believe something is to believe that it is absolutely certainly true. The other way is to believe provisionally. Here's what I think. I'm justified in believing it, but I might be wrong, right? And I think what's existentially exhausting is when you keep trying to find beliefs that you can hold absolutely certainly, right? Because you're never going to find them. Right. And as soon as you think you find one, you're going to have to deconstruct it because you didn't really have it. Yep. So when these people talk about like giving up on believing, I don't think they're saying I'm not going to believe anything anymore. I think that they're talking about like that capital T truth. I'm not going to claim that this is an infallible claim anymore. I'm not going to claim that this is an absolute certainty anymore. I'm going to live as a fallible human being, believing things in the way that human beings should. And once you make those distinctions, I think the entire thing is entirely reasonable.
Especially when you, again, like when you come out of that basement of fundamentalism and you realize that the Christian tradition has been in conversation and has been debating things that you were taught were absolute. Like a good one is hell. You know, I was taught so early on that the true understanding of hell is that you go there when you die if you're not a real Christian and you're going to burn forever and be on fire and be tormented. And that's the only biblical and Christian position on hell, period. And then you realize, or you read one book beyond the bubble of evangelical fundamentalism and realize that no, annihilationism is a valid perspective in the Christian tradition, universal reconciliation is a valid perspective, and that people way before you or even the Protestant Reformation have made compelling arguments for both of those perspectives. And so what becomes exhausting is trying to defend the indefensible, right? What becomes exhausting is trying to defend that you have some objective, infallible understanding of hell that every other Christian throughout history who disagrees with you on is just missing. That's an exhaustive thing, right? It's a lot less exhausting to say, wow, there's a lot going on here. I want to approach with curiosity instead of judgment to wonder, how did this person become have this perspective, or who is David Bentley Hart in the Eastern Orthodox tradition, and why is he so prolific, right? What does he have to offer as a Christian who lives in a whole different section of the house that I never was aware of even existed? That's a much more fulfilling way to live, because you realize that if you have the wrong belief, you're not inherently damned to hell forever. Oh, what a relief that is. Truly, you know?
And I think that probably for some people, it takes a while to break out of this thinking that you need the certainty, thinking that faith is something that you have to be absolutely certain about. Yeah. And so I think that's what these people are talking about. And that seems entirely reasonable to me, and not at all what he's making of these tweets that he's found.
100%. I mean, it's okay. Well, let's keep going. We got about 5 minutes left, friends. Thanks for hanging in. This is so much fun. Kevin, when you dropped off into the abyss, I said I have not laughed this hard on a live in a long time. And it just feels very cathartic to just chuckle with friends and with people watching. It just feels so good. So I love feeling connected, and thanks for doing this. It's a lot of fun.
Believing, to which everyone in the room asks, "Do you believe that?" Right? I mean, this is kind of a self-refuting kind of thing.
Okay, let it go.
Yeah, I'll let it go.
But you see the problem. in this deconstruction movement, you're never off this cycle. You're always and reconstructing. And that's why the advice from the deconstructionists is to stop constructing new beliefs. So here's our good friend, the naked pastor again. Here's what he says.
I recommend not reconstructing after you deconstruct, because there is, in my opinion, no after. For me, deconstruction is a way of life. It's not like you're backsliding or you're just questioning your beliefs or whatever. Something deep down inside is informing you that beliefs aren't where it's at. The answers aren't in the beliefs. In fact, I say questions are the answer. So don't reconstruct, my advice, because you're only going to reconstruct into another theology that you'll have to eventually deconstruct later. Also, just always question everything all the time, forever. That's a way of life. That's called deconstruction.
Okay, so let's
going.
question some of this stuff. Here's the thing, and there's a lot that we could say in response to that, but I want you to notice something. He can't live that. In fact, he doesn't. If you follow Naked Pastor, he has all kinds of these graphics where he is teaching people theology, okay? It's not a matter of whether or not you're doing theology. It's that he just has, whether you have good or bad theology, okay? Everyone is a theologian, and he is a progressive theologian.
Yeah.
What a claim.
Here's the thing. I think that, again, he's got a point that everybody's doing theology, but he's missing that there are two different ways to do theology. And that one of them is doing theology thinking that you have the absolute certainty, thinking that the Bible is giving you exactly your beliefs. And the other one is doing theology as a fallible human being who says, here's how I'm making sense of this, given my understanding of the God of love at this point and how this works out in the world. Right. But not saying that that's an absolute position that you've gotten, and not saying that there's absolute certainty behind it. And I think, again, we can apply that distinction to the kind of thing that the Naked Pastor is talking about there. It feels weird to say the Naked Pastor at all, but I think that that's the kind of thing that he's talking about there, because he's absolutely right. It's not that deconstructionists are not doing theology, but they are doing a very different kind of theology from the kind of theology that he's doing. Right. And so when they say things like, well, I'm just going to give up on believing, or I'm going to give up on doing theology, I think they mean I'm going to give up on doing theology where I think I have the absolute certainty, where I think that the Bible is just directly giving me answers, where I think that God is giving me the conclusions that I'm coming to. Right. And for them, that's what theology always used to mean. And so if they give up on that and they live as human beings that are asking questions about this, then that's a different thing than what they knew as theology before.
Exactly. No, I totally agree. It's a great way of putting it.
It does remind me, this is 2 Timothy. Again, Paul writing this last letter, talking about trouble in the world, trouble in the church. And he says to avoid certain people. And one of the people that he says to avoid are people who are always learning and never able to arrive at a knowledge of the truth. That is postmodernism. That is Derrida in a nutshell. In fact, we could go into some of the nitty-gritty there. But that's these people. They're never able to arrive at the truth as they and reconstruct.
Wow, that's a very intense line.
Yeah. No, apparently I never knew that Timothy was written in response to Derrida.
Yeah.
That is impressive. But I mean, maybe
I also capture weak women as well, because the verse says, for among them are those who creep into households and capture weak women, burdened with sins and led astray by various passions, always learning and never able to arrive at a knowledge of the truth. Yeah, so clearly, not only do I never arrive at truth, I also capture weak women, and I'm burdened with sins and led astray by various passions. All true.
Yes. Yeah. All the case. 2 Timothy had you down. Okay. So let's play the game again. Let's see if we can find another Bible verse that would go in a very different direction from the way that this one has gone when we pull it from the Bible. So if you can push play.
All right.
Modernism. That is Derrida in a nutshell. In fact, we could go into some of the nitty-gritty there, but that's these people. they're never able to arrive at the truth as they and reconstruct.
All right, what do you got for me? Let's see.
So here we go. Here's my Timu version of his. I clearly need to get better graphics.
Come on, dude, step it up with that huge deconstruction budget. Obviously,
yeah. He says the problem is people who continue to learn but never come to know the truth. Well, how about this? Knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. Anyone who claims to know something does not yet have the necessary knowledge. But anyone who loves God is known by him. So what are we talking about here? Well, knowledge is when you claim to have infallible conclusions, confusing yourself with God. Mm-hmm. But love is respecting others in charity, even when they come to different conclusions.
Boom, now, red penned.
You see, red penned. And this has the advantage of actually having been written by Paul, because 1 Timothy is not written by Paul.
I was hoping you would say that, but yes, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, but again, my claim is not that. I don't think that, Paul didn't write 1 Corinthians 8 in response to Tim, just like 1 Timothy was not written in response to Derrida. And we shouldn't pretend that these verses are immediately applicable to our current situations in these ways. This is all just to say, again, we should accept that we are human beings, and every time we interpret the Bible, we're not pulling some word from God, that's immediately applicable to what we're doing. We're interpreting as we go. And so, every time he wants to come up with a verse, I will come up with another verse for him that cuts in a different direction.
Yeah, I'm glad you're doing this because, again, it says right here, anyone who claims to know something does not yet have the necessary knowledge. I mean, Tim claims to know a lot of things. So I guess by this Bible verse, Tim actually doesn't know anything. But I would never apply that to Tim.
Tim doesn't know anything.
I don't think that's what's happening here, right? And so I think it's a really good example of how you can take the Bible, pillage it for verses, take certain sections out of the verse, ignore the first half that obviously that clearly paints a picture that we're not talking about Derrida, and then say, look, boom, there's the proof. It's like, is that your epistemology?
Yep.
Random Bible verses in English, by the way, that are just thrown around to make blanket assumptions? Yikes. Okay. We're almost there, friends. This is a lot of fun. Oh, God, this is so nice. What a good break.
Here's the last thing. So you had no correct
took so much time on those Bible verses.
No ending to the process. And finally, you're never going to end at the truth. And finally, there's no biblical authority. And this became clear.
My favorite.
Elisa and I would spend so much time following this hashtag and these individuals, and it is depressing, okay? And most of whom reject Scripture altogether.
No.
So remember Joe said, no one gets to tell you what your faith needs to look like, and that includes Paul, and that includes Matthew, and Mark, and John, and go down the list, okay? Including Jesus.
Okay. So first of all, of course they can't tell you what your faith is supposed to look like. First, we have no writings from Matthew or Mark or John or from Jesus directly. So if you're looking for them to directly tell you what your faith is supposed to be, you're pretty much out of luck.
Right. Point one. Right.
Yeah. Second, none of the people in the Bible were writing to us in the 20th century in any case. And this is something they continually miss because they just use the Bible as if it is a direct message for us. Finally, third, they can't tell you what your faith is supposed to be because these people disagree with each other. Right. If you go to the Bible and think you're going to find the instructions for the one way to salvation, go to Matthew and find out that you need to take care of the poor and the oppressed. Right. Go to Paul and find out that you need to have the mind of Christ. Right. Go to James and find out that you need to have works in addition to your faith. Right? Go to all of these have different positions. They are not univocal in what they're doing. So if he wants to find that there is some one message that in fact can tell you what your faith is supposed to look like, he's going to be the one that's producing that message. He's not actually going and taking it from the Bible. He's picking and choosing verses, picking and choosing interpretations to come up with his own or his communities, and then imposing that on other people. And again, this is exactly what deconstruction is set up to try and knock down. It's kind of phenomenal that he never realized in doing his research that he's participating in exactly the problems that deconstruction is pointing out.
Yep. I have nothing really to add to this. I completely agree with you 100%. So let's, I mean, yeah. And I guess the only thing I'll add to this is, all you have to do is just forget even the broader Christian tradition with different Bibles and different books of the Bible, and forget that part. That's low-hanging fruit. Just go look at how different evangelicals interpret the Bible. Speaking in tongues, don't speak in tongues, Calvinism, Arminianism, and many of them are hardliners. Many of them will tie it back to salvation. It's just it's so fascinating to watch Tim use these words, biblical authority, a biblical perspective, while participating in a tradition that can't even agree on what that is, even for what they might call our major, first-rate issues. It's so frustrating. All right, let's keep it going.
It's an authority issue, not just a truth issue, but an authority issue. There can be no authority above yourself. So here's Chris Kratzer, a progressive Christian,
I don't know who that is.
Counseling someone in their deconstruction. Here's
somebody on Twitter.
In a counseling session with a person deconstructing their faith, they were struggling deeply with a theological theory of penal substitution to the point of significant anxiety and restlessness. Ultimately, after a lengthy discussion, she asked me what I do with a couple of specific verses by Paul where he clearly supports penal substitution. Now, here's the deconstruction move. Okay, you think, is he going to debate what that verse means? No. Here's what he says. I told her he's wrong. Paul's wrong.
Oh my God.
She replied, I'm allowed to do that? It's okay to say he's wrong? I could hear over the phone the shackles break free from around her heart, and the monstrous God hiding under her bed was revealed as a fraud created by men. She started breathing for the first time. It's pretty dramatic stuff. Folks, this is what's wrong with much of Christianity. All authority is given to a book and then given to church people who claim its authority for themselves. If you can't say Paul is wrong, it's going to be harder to say that they are wrong. That's by design. The most dangerous thing in all of Christianity is a person who reads the Bible in front of them who has not learned to read the mind of Christ. Just put self within them.
Interesting.
And see that as the ultimate light.
Wait,
What's the authority? Natasha summarizes this beautifully. Natasha Crane, she wrote a great book called Faithfully Different. Deconstruction doesn't usually imply a deconversion to atheism, but it is certainly a deconversion of its own kind from a worldview rooted in the authority of the Bible to a worldview rooted in the authority of self.
Wow, talk about reading in First off, I love what Chris wrote, I gotta be honest, because, I tell people often when Paul tells slaves to obey their masters, I say, no, Paul's wrong. There you go.
Yeah.
Look at me. Look at me. Look at me. When Paul says it's a shame for a man to have long hair, I go, I don't think he's right about that. I don't think it is shameful.
Yeah.
Whoa, look at me and my crazy anti-biblical authority. Like we all do this. We all freaking do this.
I mean, I've got news for him. Not only is Paul wrong, Paul's kind of a jerk sometimes. This is really not that problematic. But I also want to come back to the thing about that he says at the end, that everything comes back to the authority of the self, because he had to read that into the tweet, because the guy says, right, they think that the authority is in the Bible, in the community, and they ignore the authority of Christ. And he has to say, replace that with self. Why?
Right.
Why would we replace that with self? And then he goes to a book by another apologist who's critiquing deconstruction, who makes the claim, it's all about the self. And it's like, if you couldn't find any deconstructionists anywhere in your year of research that claimed that the definitive source of authority in deconstructionism is the self, maybe that's because this isn't a claim that people make in deconstruction, right? I think that people recognize authorities that are different from themselves. They're exactly trying to open themselves up to a whole bunch of different sources and look at and be in dialogue with those. What they're rejecting is the white evangelical authority of the church and that construction of the Bible. But that doesn't put the self at the center of things. If anything, it deconstructs the place that those ministers and apologists have been playing at the center of authority. And I think that's what Tim is worried about.
That's the whole point that I don't understand how Tim can get away from. We all have a self. We all interpret that lens through the self. I mean, Tim is doing the same thing. He might appeal to other people, but we're all doing that. I'm appealing to you. Maybe I appeal to Pete Enns. Tim might appeal to, I don't know, whoever he reads that have given him this framework, whoever his professor is that has grounded him in this worldview. Maybe the Apostle Paul, whatever it is. We all do this, Tim, and we all do it from ourself. We're all using different faculties inside of ourselves to make what we think are, or hope are consistent or rational determinations about what the Bible might or might not be saying, and we want to do it intentionally. It's mind-blowing that Tim can really sit there pretending like somehow he's not using himself at all for an interpretive framework. He's just reading the Bible plainly, while people like me and you are just we're so self-centered. We just have to renegotiate everything so we get the benefit of the doubt, which is so ironic because white evangelicalism is built upon the self. It's built upon self-preservation. It's built upon bragging about how much we know and how great we are and how we have the truth. It's built upon taking over and being in charge, putting themselves first. Just look at why they rally around Trump and why they refuse to take things like the Black Christian tradition seriously, because it's all about giving them power and privilege. Like, Tim is part of a system. He is part of a worldview that prioritizes itself, its interpretation, its understanding of the Bible as the one true way of being Christian. And when people push against it, he goes, they're so self-centered. They're all about the self. They just want to do whatever makes them feel good. Tim, you're doing the same thing. I think that you actually enjoy writing. I'm sure you enjoy doing your Mr. B Red Pen Logic stuff. I'm sure you get enjoyment out of doing these talks. I would never accuse you of doing things just that make you feel good, but certainly we get pleasure out of doing this. I like doing these lives. Yes, welcome to being a human being. I don't want to do things that I don't like to do. that happens.
Yeah,
it's unreal.
Yeah, that's right.
Dude, welcome to being a human being. Jeez, it's insufferable. Okay, last clip I think you have here.
The last clip. We're just gonna wrap it up.
Woo! Here. We made it. Let's go.
And that's what you see over and over again. Deconstruction is destructive to faith. And it's because there is no correct destination. Doesn't matter where you land. In fact, it does, though, for them. They don't want you to land in historic Christianity. Okay, anywhere but that. There's no ending to this process, and that's exhausting. And finally, there's no biblical authority.
Okay, yeah. Can I just speak to them really quick, and I'll give it to you? As someone who literally grew up deeply embedded in white conservative evangelical Christianity, who was homeschooled, who did the purity pledges, who did everything the right way. Everything. I even saved myself for marriage. I did everything the right way. In fact, I'll tell the world a very embarrassing story, but it's fine. It's out there. I was so worked up during my first kiss with my girlfriend at 17, I threw up afterwards. I was so anxious. This is a true story. I was so anxious. I did what Tim said. And I understand that some people leave faith entirely, which, by the way, they have the right to do. However, deconstruction gave me the tools and the permission to ask not just better questions, but to maybe entertain better answers that were more consistent with the values of Jesus, of loving our neighbor as ourselves. Because when I saw people who claimed to be Christians denigrating people like George Floyd as he begged for his life, as an officer knelt on his neck for 7+ minutes, and then I watched right-wing commentators say he deserved it, and then I watched pastors I knew repost those perspectives, I thought to myself, I'm not sure how this is loving your neighbor. I'm not sure how this is liberating the oppressed. I'm not sure how this is standing in solidarity with the marginalized like Jesus did. Deconstruction allowed me to come to a different answer than the Christian perspective is entertaining thoughts that George Floyd deserved it. So that's just one example out of many. I'll give you guys one more, just in case Tim Barnett and Alicia Childers are watching this. Having to not struggle between actually accepting my gay neighbor as fully made in the image of God and worthy of dignity, love, and respecting human flourishing, or choosing between loving God, was such a freeing idea that maybe the way I demonstrate my love for God is how I love my queer neighbor. Deconstruction gave me these tools that have expanded my notions, understanding of love and justice and beauty and goodness. I mean, the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, long-suffering, etc. And so I am thrilled that I discovered this term deconstruction. I'm thrilled it brought me into the world of meeting people like yourself, Kevin, other amazing biblical scholars who have blown my mind about the beauty and complexity and sometimes even the ugly parts, right, of the Bible that we have to wrestle with as people who want to be faithful to the way of Jesus and all of the complexity in that. Deconstruction was a gift from God. And to hear Tim Barnett say what he says, not only is it completely just not objectively true. I'm giving you my experience, which flies in the face of nothing good comes from deconstruction. But my gosh, like, it's what's most frustrating to this, and it's all yours, Kevin, is watching Tim and Elisa probably get a decent advance for writing the book. They write the book, they tour on the book, they do sessions like this for thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people, and they still won't come on someone's podcast who's like, hey, I deconstructed. I would love to have a good faith dialogue with you. And their response pretty much is silence. It's no, I'll talk at you. I'll talk about you. I will gladly misrepresent so much of what you think you believe, but I won't talk with you. And it's incredibly disingenuous. I mean, it comes across, and I don't want to say that this is intentional, but it comes across like a huge grift because they know that if they can keep scaring their white evangelical base about the boogeyman out there and not call out the blatant fascism in their midst, if they don't have to call out Trump or Elon Musk doing Nazi salutes or the white evangelical history of segregation and lynching and all of that stuff, right? They can, instead of doing all that and actually doing the real work, they can just scapegoat people who have been really hurt by the church, who have found a better path forward in their faith, and then make money off of that by giving their white evangelicals a nice coddling that, no, it's all okay. You guys are safe in here, but the world and deconstruction with Decon 23 and its 45 likes, they're the real threat. It is unbelievable. And it makes me happy I left this world behind.
Yeah. I mean, I want to go back and say again, I think that both those who often deconstruct and those who are criticizing them too often think about that white evangelical church as Christianity and as traditional Christianity, or what he said, historical Christianity. And they conceive of themselves as like leaving behind historical Christianity. What I appreciate about the Christian tradition as I study it is how incredibly diverse it is, how many different positions there are, exactly getting into discussions with people from Eastern Orthodoxy or from Roman Catholicism, and going back and forth with all of these different perspectives. And to realize that in many ways, deconstructing is deconstructing from one very particular recent kind of Christianity and entering back into a flow of a big tradition that has always been a big tradition, that has always been in the process of evolution. And that, if we pick up with Gregory of Nyssa, maybe that's the ultimate goal for all of us is, as we ascend towards God, continually finding those new things that God is doing that blow our minds, that make us rethink who God is, and that lead us to new truths as we go, and finding that along the way we can respect and love our neighbors even if they come to different conclusions.
I am on board. Kevin, I really appreciate you spending a couple hours with us to kind of unpack that. Hopefully it helps people really think more critically about their faith. Where can folks find you? Are you still on TikTok for now?
I'm still on TikTok for now. I've got an Instagram. I am on YouTube. I'm just about everywhere at this point. I've got something going on in every fire. So, yep.
And we'll make sure to do more of these lives this coming year. There's going to be a lot to respond to. White nationalism is on the rise, so we need voices like yours more than ever. Friends, I really appreciate you being here. I mean this from the bottom of my heart. I love going live on YouTube with you. I love feeling, you know why it is, or why I feel this? Because I feel connected to you, and I work inside of this office space that I made out of my guest bedroom and I work alone. And going live, I feel like I'm in the moment, like we're working on this together. And my goal really is to do more of these. April and I are launching another show called the Tim and April Show. That will be off the ground soon. We really are moving a lot of our main efforts to YouTube and more long form pieces of content like this. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. Again, I love being here. Thank you for giving me this opportunity and privilege to do this work full time, because I absolutely love it. We are going nowhere. We are going absolutely nowhere. I'm only digging my heels in deeper in the sand during this upcoming regime with Trump and the rise of fascism. We have so much work to do. We are not going anywhere. Your support makes that possible. Please make sure to give this video a like, give this the channel a subscription. That would be so helpful. If you want to support the work that we do, you can donate via the description below. That's all I got for now, friends. Thanks for being here. I'll talk to you all next time. See ya.